refreshment. Ladies and gentlemen, the revolution.
Unable to connect the chat. What's that about? Why cannot connect the chat? Hey, what, Ben, will come back live in Garden? Got Sanders unable to connect the chat. You're in the Garden right now. Can you send me something? Let me know if you got it. I can see the chat, see the comments. We're going to talk about something today that's pretty funny, man. It's real funny. Hypocritical and very funny. As if I'm Bane would have come back in the Garden. See the title? The titles are Dave Chappelle, Ruffled Some Feathers. And boy, this is going to be funny. But it's also going to be really thought-provoking. So it's going to be a lot of food for thought today. Labor Day. I don't know how many people are going to be out there today, but we'll see how it goes. Family, I don't know if you got a chance to check out Dave Chappelle's special. He had a special on Netflix called Sticks and Stones. And if you've been on social media, if you've been watching the television, then you actually read a lot of the flack and a lot of the negative criticism that Dave Chappelle has been receiving for this particular show. Like I said, if you haven't had a chance to watch it, it's on Netflix, and it's Sticks and Stones. It's going to be a 3-show series, and he's going to be making about $60 million to do these 3 shows, okay? Now, you got to ask yourself, man, I don't know if I'm on, what's up with my chat? Let me see. Okay, is that it? Says unable to connect the chat, so I don't know what that's about. I don't know what that's about, but I digress. If you can send a comment, see if you can try to send a comment so I can see if it's on my end or what. But like I said, family, you haven't had a chance to watch it. Like I said, but if you under the age of 18, of course, you need parental consent if you're under the age of 18, because it's a show that's on Netflix that has, of course, adult content, all right? But the purpose of this video is going to tell you how this adult content has been pretty much criticized because it offends certain groups of people. And by offending certain groups of people, you got to ask yourself, what we've been taught since we were kids, indoctrinated to this system where you know about your First Amendment rights. And to me, this is the perfect example of First Amendment rights and how you okay unless it's viewed politically incorrect. And see, that's the thing to me that I was never taught that in school about what was politically correct and what was politically incorrect. I mean, when you grow up, you kind of know, things that you say, if it's coming from a negative point, if it's coming from a bad place, that's a negative statement. You know that. But even still, that's protected under the First Amendment. As long as you're not, your language or your ideology isn't causing violence or anything like that, or restricting individuals, then you're good. You can say whatever you want to say. And so you taught that at a young age. And so when you see that, major media outlets, even on the television, are condemning the things that Dave Chappelle said on his special on Netflix called Sticks and Bones, then you have to ask yourself, wait a minute, what about the First Amendment rights? And plus, he's a comedian. It's jokes. You did? And so someone that's conscious, you have to then go back and say, wait a minute. When he was doing all those shows about, the stereotypical Afrocentric characters, pimps and hoes and gangsters and all of that, it wasn't a problem. He made millions of dollars when the stereotype was basically geared toward a certain group of people. And of course, that certain group of people didn't have the particular political, backing to, censor that type of content. I mean, when you're able to say, in Dave Chappelle shows, say nigga 1,000 times, and no organizations came out and had a problem with it. Okay, or the negative stereotypes that were depicted on the shows. If you're Afro melanated, we weren't tripping because it's comedy. You dig? It's comedy, and so for a comedian, and guys, you gotta realize I go all the way back to the '70s. Where Richard Pryor and all those guys, they were saying a lot of different things that today could not be said. Now think about that for a minute. This Constitution and the First Amendment rights, which is freedom of speech, has been in the Constitution for a lot of years. You did? And so how is it that 30 years ago, things that you could say just on a casual level was viewed just on a casual level, was not viewed negative or viewed discriminatory or racist, anything like that. 30 years ago, you did? You go back 45, 50 years ago where they was actually, like saying nigger, and that was on TV like it was nothing. And so now they still can say, the quote unquote N word, which is nigger, on TV, today. I mean, Quentin Tarantino, the guy that made Pulp Fiction and Django Unchained, I mean, come on. So I said to say this, there are certain terms that today, if you criticize a certain group in a humorous manner, you will be deemed, you will be criticized, and actually you can be ostracized. I mean, I don't think Dave Chappelle cares because he has such a huge following, and plus when you have a streaming service like Netflix that's making like $1 billion a month, they not tripping. I mean, that Dave Chappelle show could not be shown on any what they call mainstream media outlet. Even me talking about it, I mean, I'm looking at my chat. I can't even have people chat. It says unable to connect to chat. Please try again later. But I'm live. All right. So I think I'm gonna come back with this live. But like I say, Dave Chappelle, he ruffled a lot of feathers. If you didn't get a chance to watch it, go check it out. I just think it's really hypocritical on the media's part and any other publication or any other person that's in the media to criticize Dave Chappelle for his ability to speak his mind and to talk about whatever it is he wants to talk about in the form and fashion or the arena that he has. It's not causing violence or anything like that. But just because you're offended, you have all these people from these different situations, these different organizations, deeming what he said anti-trans, offensive. To me, that's ridiculous, and it's very hypocritical, okay? Because your feelings hurt. And it's a comedian. I just can't stress enough, family. It's a comedian. When he was talking about other groups of people, it wasn't a problem. But once again, real news and fake news. Yes, Dave Chappelle, he ruffles some feathers, okay? But when you look at the civil rights movement, what does that do? Nothing, because even now, I mean, Quentin Tarantino's not being sued for the content that he's being able to put out there. Okay, so there is a thin line. There is a hypocrisy. Okay, and there is a situation where you know your rights, our rights, are kind of being censored. I mean, when you can say something 15 years ago, I can use Kevin Hart as an example. He made a comment, a tweet, some tweets about 10 years ago, and he wanted to host the Oscars, and he received a lot of backlash for that, where he made him pull out, and then he actually apologized for those jokes because they were just jokes. And you hear comedians joke all the time, and so it's really interesting. And I think I didn't put that on the title of this video, but of the live, but make sure you think before you push sin, okay? Because once you push sin, it's out there, and they can come back. I don't know how many, and I like to tell my students this all the time: be careful, because you're accountable for no matter what you do on this internet, because it's called the World Wide Web. And remember, there's no such thing as delete. Okay. And so I just thought it was interesting how Dave Chappelle ruffled feathers, and like I say, have the quote unquote civil rights movement. I thought it pertained to a certain group of people back in the 60s, but now we know, and now we see that it's actually was actually a facade for Afro Americans, so that other groups of people can benefit from the quote unquote civil rights movement. Because once again, there are groups of people that you cannot particularly either joke about or have certain terms about that 30, 40 years ago, I mean, it was like mainstream. Okay. And so I thought that was interesting. Once again, family, I think my chat is disabled. I don't know what's up with that. So I'm gonna go ahead and get up out of the garden. Like I said, if you didn't get a chance to subscribe, make sure you hit the subscription button. And I thought they were pretty cool. Dave Chappelle, ruffled those fellas. I'm pretty much in the group where if you ain't ruffled feathers, then you ain't really gave anybody food for thought. They're not thinking. And remember, the worst thing that a nation can have is a whole nation of critically thinking people, analytical people, people that are asking questions, okay? And not just going on, status quo. And before I get out of here, I want to I'll give you an example. Me and my family, we coming back. I got my boys with me, and we coming back from my hometown of Vernon, Texas, which is located way up north Texas. And it's not even 26 miles from Oklahoma border. So where I was born and grew up is located way north of where I'm living now. Vernon, Texas is in North Texas, okay? And I'm talking where, being a history teacher, I understand that where you live affects how you live. And here in Texas, the 12-year-old, actually 7th graders, are taught Texas history. And they basically taught the philosophy of where you live affects how you live, okay? And how we have different regions in Texas. Actually, it's like 4 regions in Texas. And I actually grew up in the Northern Plains. Actually 5 regions, I think. I actually grew up in the Northern Plains region, okay? Which would be called the Great Plains, rather. And so being way up there, it was a trip, because the climate is different, the culture is different from being down here in Texas, being down here in Houston, where it's the coastal region, where the diet is different. Everything is different, you know what I mean? And so I just think it's kind of crazy how, information that we get isn't for everybody to receive. And so when you have groups of people like Dave Chappelle, like Howard Stern, they'll talk about different things that ruffle feathers, even though we have First Amendment rights. All right. Now, once again, real news, fake news. This whole Dave Chappelle situation, and also too the civil rights movement situation, because remember, this is why there are groups of people that can have a platform to try to censor people, to try to censor Dave Chappelle, because There's a lot of money involved. Even though these same people that say what Dave Chappelle said is offensive to certain groups of people, these are the same people that want to have their First Amendment right protected. See the hypocrisy. And so then it comes back to this movement, which was, fabricated back in the 60s and the 50s called the Civil Rights Movement, which what did it actually do? Because remember, it was supposed to have to be a movement that was supposed to, improve the civility of Afro American people. You did? But then, of course, over the course of time, civil rights were pretty much handed out like a buffet to women's movement, the liberation women's movement, uh, the gay movement, the the quote unquote anti-Semitic movement. Okay, and so as you have all of these particular movements, because I'm telling you, there are groups of people that not talk about in a humorous manner or criticize, and you have to ask yourself, but as a kid, I was taught about the First Amendment. Okay, so the hypocrisy, family, is hidden in plain sight, right? But then you got to ask yourself, why? What is the motive for the hypocrisy? It goes back to real news and fake news. Right, and how he ruffled feathers, right? But how many people even know that the White House, which Donald Trump and his organization, his administration, just sent a gun control bill, a piece of legislation to Congress so that Congress can look at it after they get back. Because remember, Congress, they still on vacation. And you got to ask yourself then, why would the White House want to send a legislation to Congress about gun control? Well, I'm in Texas. And being in Texas, I know that just this past weekend, they had another mass shooting in Odessa, Texas, which is located in West Texas. You did? And so that's real news, right? But once again, it's on the television. And I always say this, you're born with five senses. The ability to see, smell, to hear, to taste, to feel. Once you get to the level of indoctrination or to the level of cognitive dissonance where you don't even trust those five senses that the Most High have blessed you with, you'll fall for anything. I mean, anything. And if you watch my previous videos, you'll know that my stance, I won't say stance, but just what my senses tell me about a lot of the things that, have been, given to me in the form of, television shows, books, social media, internet, this misinformation. If I would have just totally disregarded my five senses, I wouldn't be able to make these type of videos. Okay, that's why, like I said, if you're just joining me, that's why I can say Dave Chappelle ruffled feathers and relate that to the Constitution, which gives us First Amendment rights. Which, if you understand it as a kid, then you know that First Amendment rights means you have the freedom of speech, and with the freedom of speech, then the one group of people that should never ever have to worry about being condemned by things they say would be comedians, because that's what they do for a living. They can ride that line because they're comedians. And family, once again, I don't know why my chat is disabled. It says please try again later, but I'm still alive, and I really like to interact with the people in the garden. And it's tripping me out. Let me see if I can post something right quick. Let me see. Okay, Bean now. Okay, cool. Maybe just, huh. But then when I look at my other fail safes, it says I'm the only one in the garden. When I'm looking, I'm seeing other people in the garden. But I digress. Once again, like I say, that's where I start to question things because of the fact that my title says Dave Chappelle's Ruffled Feathers. Why? And it's satirical and as well as kind of rhetorical because how can someone ruffle feathers with just something that they're saying in a comedic way? You did? And then, if you notice, the next title was like the civil rights, the civil rights movements, because now, there's groups of people that can actually say that their civil rights are being violated. Okay? So I think the whole thing was a scam from the beginning because remember, they're never going to present something to you unless there's been, focus groups held, observation of data collected. Like any scientific method, you have to have a control. You have to have something that they can actually gauge and measure before they can present it to the public. Just like medication. They're not going to give you medication until they go through a process of steps to assure that the medication is going to treat, not cure, but treat certain symptoms. So there's a process. So this whole process of indoctrination and cognitive dissonance happens over a period of time. It's just not given to us. So when you think about in the 60s, the civil rights movement and how, you thought that it was supposed to benefit the lifestyle or benefit the civility of quote unquote African Americans back then you have to look at the condition of African Americans, quote unquote, today. Did it work or no? Okay. Well, then you look at, who else can actually, be protected under the civil rights umbrella? Well, then now you see that it has to have a plan before. You did? And so that alone tells you that the civil rights movement was, to me, somewhat ambiguous, to say the least. Okay? So, family, like I say, thanks for joining me in the garden. If you're not in the garden, make sure come back and check it back out at a later date. This is Labor Day. I know a lot of people out there enjoying their families, but like I say, and eating barbecue and all that kind of stuff. But make sure you understand your wealth is your health. So what you put in your body is going to pretty much dictate what comes out of your body. And you want to make sure what comes out of your body not just comes out on that end down there, or what comes out on this end up here. Okay? So in the meantime, between time, family, may the Most High Inside bring you joy, and being with us out of 5,000.